Hello everyone. I'm so excited to welcome you to today's What Works X webinar. I would like to invite you to connect to menti.com as we'll be using this platform as a way to engage with our wonderful viewers, you guys, today. So please, may I invite you now to go to menti.com and enter the code 290529. You may do so by connecting to either a second device or opening up another browser on your laptop or computer screen. So I'll just give you a moment to do that. So my name is Nada Salha and I am part of the KHDA team. I will be facilitating today's webinar along with my colleagues Magnus and Maya. In 2012, as many of you know, a movement known as What Works began and would come to change the culture of education in Dubai. It was a series of events that was anchored in a strength-based approach and was focused on collaboration. What Works X, which is where we are at the moment, is pretty much the same concept, just the platform changes, and perhaps with the support of technology, it allows us for even more teachers to participate and share what is working in their own schools. So today we have a huge number of attendees, and I can see we've hit over 200 attendees. And we hope that you enjoy what we have in store for you today, or it at least inspires you to try something new. Now, as I'm very curious person, I would love to know who is in our virtual audience today. And there on your screen is your first Menti question. So I invite you now to let us know, what role do you play at your school? If I have not listed your role, and sincere apologies for that, but please select other and let us know in the chat feature on the Teams platform what your role is. So we've already got 3 in the other category. So I'd love to know who I've accidentally missed out on. But I can see this is an early years webinar, or it's focused on the early years. So we can see taking the lead there are early years educators and teachers. I'll be interested to know who else we have on the call today. It's great to see people from the senior leadership team online with us today. Welcome to you all. A lot of teaching assistants and learning support people also here. Welcome to you. We actually have, I'm just having a look, we have 242 attendees. So this is a fantastic level of engagement and shows that there's a lot of people wanting support or validation in their role with early years distance learning provision. I'm not putting pressure on our team from SAFA today, but I'm sure they're going to do a fantastic job in sharing their journey. Well, to all of you, and on behalf of all of us at KHDA, would like to express our heart thanks to all the great work you are doing to support the continuation of learning. Not only are you providing education to young hearts and minds all over Dubai, but you're also supporting their well-being and giving them a sense of normalcy by seeing your lovely familiar faces and hearing your voices every day. I mean, take it from me, as a parent of 3 children, I've seen that you've had to transform the way you teach and the way that you've had to engage and motivate student learning. And that is certainly not an easy task. So congratulations and thank you so much for all that you do. And I'm sure there's been a huge learning curve for all of us, but I'm hopeful that we are going to come out of this stronger, more purposeful and kinder. So thank you for all that you do, and thank you for participating in the Menti. I'll be coming back to the Menti platform later, so just put that to the side for now. But today's webinar is about early years, and we're fortunate to have 3 wonderful educators from Suffolk Community School here with us today to join their journey. The presentation will be followed by a Q&A discussion, which will be facilitated by my awesome colleague, Magnus. Unfortunately, webinars on the Teams platform does not allow for verbal interactions with the audience, but please, I do encourage you to ask questions throughout the presentation by submitting them in the Q&A chat feature to the right of your screen and ensuring that your questions are on topic. And the wonderful Maya is there at the back end to moderate the questions coming through on the chat feature. So as I said before, I'll be back to close the session at the end of the webinar to seek your quick feedback, if you don't mind, using menti.com again. So right now I'll pass on to Magnus to introduce our wonderful presenters. And Magnus, I'll just bring you up on the screen. Okay. Over to you, Magnus.
Thank you, Nada. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar. It is now my pleasure to introduce our presenters from the Suffolk Community School in Dubai. It's Leanne Fritz, she's the Vice Principal and Head of Primary, together with Joanne Bocott, she's the Head Teacher, Foundation Stage, and Shireen Green, who is the Assistant Head of Foundation Stage. Leanne, Joanne, and Shireen, sounds like a country group, have been kind enough to put together a presentation which responds to the theme of how to support the early years during distance learning. The early years is central for young kids to move from egocentric independent play to engaging and connecting with peers. Therefore, building opportunities to continue to develop social connectedness is important during this period of relative social isolation. Further, parents and caregivers have a great share of responsibility in the always dynamic partnership between home and school. Researchers, they say that in recent years, there has been an increase in evidence when it comes to early years of a child's education from birth to 8. They are essentially the foundational in nurturing a lifelong love of learning, harnessing their curiosity and exploration of the world, developing social connectedness and a sense of belonging, identity, and well-being. So our presenters today, Leanne Fritz, she's from New Zealand and she loves playing sports, particularly touch rugby and netball. Joanne Bocott, she's been working in the early years for the last 11 years and she loves to read and instill a passion for reading in early years. So story time is the best time for her during the day. And lastly, Shireen Green, she has been a teacher for 19 years. She is from London and loves fashion and enjoys to knit and customize clothes. So it is my great pleasure to introduce this webinar to Leanne, Joanne, and Shireen and their presentation on early years and times of distance learning. Over to you, ladies.
Good afternoon, everyone. I know Jo's going to be sharing her screen for us and we'll do some little introductions. My name is Leanne Fritz and thank you, Magnus, for our lovely introduction. We had some great time yesterday getting to know one another, didn't we, in terms of our trial run. So we are here today to introduce how we as a school have worked on our early years foundation stage, and a little bit about us for those that don't know Suffolk Community School. We are actually a school that has a through school, so we are the foundation stage all the way currently until year 12, and we'll be opening year 13 for the first time next year. We have around 1,900 students from over 77 different nationalities. We are 6 years old as a school. We are a British curriculum school and we are highly inclusive. Now, I'm very lucky to introduce my team today. They are exceptionally hard-working people who have had a lot to do with our distance learning program. But also what I wanted to open with is, firstly, to all of you, well done for getting this far. Okay, this has been a journey for every educator, but more importantly, probably particularly for our early years foundation stage. And I know without Jo and Cher, we literally wouldn't be surviving or achieving what we're doing now. At Suffolk Community School, we are very much a very real school in terms of nothing is ever perfect, and that's not what we're here to tell you about today. It's taken us a very tough journey, a journey where nothing has gone right initially, and so we have had a number of challenges, and I think it's important for many people to understand the journey that we've been on to get where we are now. One of the biggest challenges we had, and particularly on that first day, was having to build that relationship and trust with parents. What we thought they wanted in a distance learning program is actually very different to what our distance learning program looks like now. We had to use a lot of parent voice, understanding each of their own situations, what each family home was like, and making sure that was personalized. Like all families in Dubai, we have a lot of families who are multi-sibling. So maybe they have someone in the foundation stage, someone in the primary, and then children in the secondary. We also have a lot of families that may be multiple working parents. So as you can imagine in the EYFS, they're not quite like secondary children where you can sit them in front of a screen and they can get on with their learning. They do need a lot of adult support in what it is that they do, particularly if it's linked to play. We also then needed to understand the social and emotional well-being of our family. There's a lot of hardship in the middle of a global pandemic, and it was about finding that balancing act about what was right for our families, what was right for the EYFS curriculum, and what was right for our teaching staff as well. Staff, parent and student well-being was exceptionally important, and I think, we'll be honest, it was week 2 of distance learning where, as a school, we probably hit rock bottom. I know Joe and Cher will remember that Thursday. We finished the end of second week. We'd just been told that distance learning, this is it now for the rest of the term. And I think the best thing that happened to us was a wellbeing survey went out to our teachers, and we got a very, very clear, honest reflection on how they were feeling about distance learning, but also what are the small things that we could have improved to make it more manageable for them. And so that has been a priority for us with our weekly wellbeing check-ins, as well as, and that is for both staff and children, but also that regular parent voice as well. They are very much a part of the triangulation of learning and one of the biggest indicators to ensure that this is a success. I think as well it was managing the pace, the ability to be agile, but also have future thinking or forward thinking planning. The changes that we had to make on a daily hour basis in the first few weeks, but even now I think after Ramadan, it was changes that we had to modify. For example, our parents and children were very responsive to the Ramadan hours. That was something that we then decided to continue post Ramadan. And in terms of having that flexibility, it's provided more time in the morning for any additional intervention groups that we've needed, introducing maybe additional provisions without putting strain on the timetable. And I think as well, one of the last one is, we never would have learned what we've learned now without having to go through this experience. And I think this is something we all share as educators. By going through this journey, we have now changed education forever. And I think if we don't take what we've learned now and utilise that moving forward, it would be a waste. And so I know already now, myself and my team and the rest of the staff, we had a CPD day on Sunday looking at recovery and what that recovery environment is going to look like. It's not just about the curriculum, it's every aspect that we have moving forward. And so for us now, it's about using what we've learned and how we're going to do it moving forward. Now, I am very excited to pass you over to Joanne Bocott and Cher, who will be leading the presentation. But I just need to reassure you, it's taking us a journey like it has, I'm sure, with all of you to get to where we are now. And even now, it's not perfect. We're probably going to have about 20 emails pop through during this presentation that we're going to have to go away and solve and deal with after this. But it is about, we have gone through exactly what you are all going through, and the fact that we're still here now and we're still in education is a good sign. So Joe, I'm going to pass it over to you. I'm sure they'd love to hear more of the specifics regarding the early years.
Thank you very much, Leanne. Good afternoon, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to be able to share our distance learning journey with you today. We hope that you'll be able to take away some ideas, as well as maybe some reassurance about the great job that you're doing as well. At Suffolk Community School, our main priority has been adapting to the needs of our families and ultimately our little learners. We'd like to cover the following points this afternoon in our discussion today. So we'll be looking at wellbeing, and as Leanne mentioned, it's about our children, our parents, as well as our teachers as well, including all of our staff. We'll be touching upon inclusion and how we support all of our learners in our school. We'll be looking at teaching and learning and that wonderful journey that we've been on. And as Leanne mentioned, it looks very different now to what it was when it first started. And we will be touching upon feedback and assessment as well. And I know that Magnus will be sharing some questions with us afterwards, which we will hopefully be able to answer for you. Okay, so let's start with our wellbeing focus. It's extremely important for us, and as I'm sure it is for all of you. We've found that regular feedback from our learners, parents and teachers has been key to ensuring we adapt and best place support where needed. And I'm sure you'll agree that this has been a roller coaster of emotions and continues to be a journey of ups and downs. We wanted to share some ideas that we have found very useful to support in everyone's well-being. So for our children, we've included a little picture there of one of our classes for you to see. And I think the key has been keeping the feeling of being a part of their class. We didn't actually start live lessons with our younger learners until week 3 in EYFS. It was after parent feedback and the success of the Zoom sessions with our older year groups that we found that there was a real need for face-to-face interactions with their friends and teachers. Of course, this came with quite a few hesitations from all of us, such as how will we get 3-year-olds to sit down and concentrate? And also, particularly for our teachers, how will I teach with lots of parents watching me? However, the benefits of the live lessons, particularly pastorally, quickly outweighed these worries, and we haven't looked back. Small group Zooms have worked very well alongside weekly whole class pastoral Zooms and 3P live Zooms, which is a great way for the children to all see each other within the year group as well. We found that instilling ways of working with our little learners has really helped through assemblies and positive reinforcement. And I'll go into a few more ways of how we've supported our younger learners in a little while. Supporting our parents, you can see there in our little cycle there as well. So I think being sympathetic to how their lives have changed and how they've become an even bigger facilitator of their child's learning. Taking regular feedback from our parents has really helped us to shape our distance learning programme as the term has progressed. And please note, as Leanne mentioned, we're still progressing. It's going to be right up until the end of this term and very much into term 1 of next academic year. We've introduced optional and compulsory lessons on our timetables so that parents can choose how much they complete during the day and have the flexibility to complete optional activities when best suits their family, if they wish to. We've also provided additional webinars for our parents. For example, we sent a survey out near the beginning of this term, and we found that a lot of our parents, they were helping and trying their best to support their children with their phonics learning. However, they didn't really know a lot about it, so they asked for our help. That's when we put on a phonics workshop to support them, to give them strategies and to talk through terminology, for example, phonemes and graphemes, talking about Fred the Frog, who they didn't have any idea about. So it's important that we took that feedback on board and supported our parents where needed. We've also got a lot of transition workshops coming up. We'll talk a little bit more about transition later, but a lot of their worries are coming through now about what's going to happen next academic year, what's going to happen with my child moving to their next year group. So we're providing webinars and workshops for them with that too. Particularly in our younger year groups, there has been the need to support parents with engagement, which I'm sure you will agree that's probably happened in your settings too. Especially learning in different points in the term. We found that Kids First seminars, our pastoral Zooms and use of positive reinforcement have been key in supporting our parents. And I think taking every individual family's situation on board has really helped in kind of tailoring how we support them. And last but by no means least, our staff. Their feedback has been vital in shaping our distance learning programme. As Leanne mentioned, after the staff wellbeing survey in week 2, we quickly realised that there needed to be more manageable ways of working, including, for example, admin tasks, emails, shared planning. That's really helped in kind of making sure we have cohesive planning groups supporting one another. We have a fantastic wellbeing team within our school who've been driving a lot of different initiatives as well, including, as you can see, some of our staff there participating in Tea Thursday. So giving our staff the opportunity to have those face-to-face times, albeit over Zoom. We also have things like weekly workouts and social Zoom events so that our teachers still feel a part of that community as well. We also do something called weekly shout-outs, which is where all of our teachers have the opportunity to fill out a Google form where they can then say a thank you to somebody who may have gone over and above for them. They just want to kind of give a bit of a pat on the back to, or to perk them up if they're having a particularly bad week. So that's a great way for us to keep that well-being and spirits up. Okay, we also looked to our colleagues around the world to see how other schools supported the well-being of their school communities. We took a lot of inspiration from a school in Hong Kong who had some great advice on what worked for them and their learners, also for their staff. Mark Steed spoke about different well-being initiatives as well as coping strategies, which we adapted to work for us at SAFA. And it's been great to attend many of the webinars with schools across Dubai. I know there's a lot of working parties going on at the moment. So we try to get involved with those as much as possible and getting our staff involved as well. Again, for what we're doing today, for that reassurance of what we're doing is the best for our learners. Okay, we wanted to go through some of the wellbeing ways of working that have really worked for us, and we hope that you can take some of these ideas on board. So we do regular wellbeing check-ins, not only with our staff, but with our children. So we've created little Google forms which are sent out on Seesaw, which is our main distance learning platform. And what it does is just asks the children to share with us how they're feeling that week. And for our younger learners, obviously they do need a bit of adult support, but it's very pictorial. So we have different faces, obviously smiley face down to a sad face, and they choose and they select and tell us which one they're feeling. And that means then that the pastoral team can follow up with those children. We can see if there's any additional support we can put in place, and it just keeps that regular tracking going for their well-being. Positive reinforcement. So this is so important that we keep as much of what the children actually had in school outside of school. We need to keep that familiarity for them. So we use our house points, which were working extremely well in our FS2 cohort. The children are so excited when they're praised for their efforts and their learning, and collecting up those house points is really important for them. So we've tried to continue that through Seesaw and through our Zoom sessions as well. We also have our special SAFA stars, and for the early years, the children get, one of the children from the class get that per week, and traditionally in school they would then get to take the class mascot home with them. However, obviously at the moment we aren't able to do that, so we actually encourage the children who get the SAFA star to spend a special weekend with one of their teddies at home, create their own mascot, and then they share that with their class the following week as well, so that they still have that familiar time to kind of share and get that praise for their efforts. We have lots of other ways that we use positive reinforcement, and it's also so important that we educate our parents on how we do that as well. We also then have adapting to parent feedback. So this has been key for us, and as Leanne mentioned, we collate that regularly. We need to know how our parents are feeling. They have some great ideas on how we can support them at home, but also some things we can do in school as well. And as Leanne mentioned, there's so many different home situations going on. We need to be adaptable to every situation. We also then, as we mentioned previously, it's been a journey for us, and to begin with we had small group Zoom sessions. However, the children were really wanting that face-to-face time with the whole class. So we thought that a great way to do that would be to have their snack or their lunches together. We've had theme weeks as well, where we then had our Pride to be Purple Day. So we had a pastoral Zoom. They all wore their special purple. Lots of them got to put their uniforms back on, and they have that as a kind of sharing, show and tell time to get to see each other as well as their teacher and teaching assistants. I'm going to go to the next slide now, which kind of shows you pictorially some of the other, the ones that we're going to talk about now, some of the other areas that we've worked on. Before I move on to that slide, I just wanted to talk to you briefly about transition, as I'm sure you're all starting to think about what transition will be like for our little learners going up from FS1 to FS2, and also then FS2 up to year 1. So for us, it's been really important that we try to keep as many of the systems and procedures that we've used in school outside of school as well. So we have our transition weeks, and we've already had our first one where the children got to complete lots of different transition activities throughout the week, thinking about what they've really loved about their year group, what they excel at, what they want to tell their new teacher. They came up with some lovely ideas on what they wanted to share with their new teacher. We also had a little tour for them, so they got to see the next year group, the next building, where they will be playing and where they'll be exploring next. The playground is a big one as well, so we looked at the playground, particularly from FS2 to year 1, and where they can explore during their playtimes eventually. And it's just been a really nice way to excite the children and get them ready for that next transition, but to also gather some questions, maybe some worries that they might have, so that we can dispel any of those for them as well. We've also set up for our staff opportunities for our teachers to talk with the teacher who our children will be going to next. So that kind of pastoral handover, talking about some of their needs, you know, how they work best in the classroom, any additional information that they need to know, so that our teachers do feel well informed, ready for when that transition happens. Okay. So this just shows you pictorially some of the things that we have been doing at Safa Community School to really kind of build that element of community, which was so strong when we were able to be in school, and how we've tried to emulate that outside of school as well. So I'm sure many of you have heard of Padlet. It's been fantastic for us to kind of showcase and for the children to all see other people's ideas, other families' ideas of how they've been working and the way that they're feeling. So there's our Proud to be Purple wall there, with some of our families writing why they're proud to be purple. And the feedback from that was fantastic. It really just lifted everybody's spirits and kind of reminded everybody about our SCS spirit and how we, you know, keep each other going. We also then have assemblies. So our senior leaders in particular will lead a lot of the assemblies. It's important that the children not only see their classroom teachers, but also see us as a leadership team as well. So you can see Miss Frid there completing one of the assembly activities for the children. And that happens every week, like it would normally do in school. That happens outside of school as well. I've just included one of our other specialist stars there. So we don't just have a Safa Star of the Week, but we have stars across all subjects. It's important that the children are rewarded for their efforts in all areas of learning. So what we do is we post those on Seesaw each week as well to celebrate the special efforts that children have made in different areas of learning. And the last one there is the picture of our graduation. So our little FS2s, every year they have a special graduation. And this year, obviously, it had to look slightly different. However, we persevered and we wanted them to still have that special celebration. So we set up a few activities, gave parents lots of preparation time. One of their special expressive arts and design tasks was to have a go at making their own graduation cap. And they wore them so proudly during the graduation ceremony, which was fantastic to see. Also, we had been preparing for a special FS2 show in term 2. However, unfortunately, we didn't get to perform that. We wanted the children to still perform that to their parents where they could. So we had a music activity where they recorded themselves singing one of the special songs from their show. We then put that together to make a whole year group show, as well as then their own little class video. And that's a lovely keepsake for them to keep with them forever with all of their friends on. Within the graduation, they also then thought about what they want to be when they grow up, and we made special posters for them. They all had their own little picture holding up what they'd like to be when they grow up. And again, a lovely keepsake there of their class, and a lovely celebration of all of their learning in the early years. Okay, we're on to our next point now, discussing inclusion and how we really include all of our learners in this distance learning programme. Okay, so first and foremost, it's quality first teaching. So all of our teachers have, in the early years, have their small group Zooms, and these will be very much linked to the children's abilities so that we can pitch at the correct level. We then have differentiated and personalised activities which go out on Seesaw. So we try where possible to differentiate them to the children's specific levels so that the children are able to access it, but also to feel that are able to achieve with those activities and feel that accomplishment. We also then continue to work on the children's IEP targets. So for our children who need additional support, who have their individual educational plans, we ensure that the teachers, as well as our inclusion team, cater for those individual targets where possible during Zoom sessions, as well as their Seesaw activities. We have a fantastic inclusion team at Suffolk Community School, and they are a huge part of not only the early years but the whole school, particularly during distance learning. So our team work very closely with our parents as well as our teachers, and of course on a one-to-one basis with our little learners as well, through one-to-one and small group Zooms, depending on the needs and when they crop up. We also have personalised Seesaw activities, so our inclusion department, depending on the children's needs, or maybe groups of children are, from our data we see, or actually we need to support some of our ELL learners with some of their communication and language, for example. Our inclusion department will then devise different activities, different intervention groups to support those children in those areas. And just as we would do in school in the early years, we have communication and language and personal, social and emotional activities, which are normally run in small group settings. We've now transferred that to Zoom sessions, as well as the follow-up Seesaw activities as well. We obviously want to utilise our teaching assistants where possible, and the children miss those dearly just as much as their teachers. They're a huge part of the classroom environment. So we make sure that they are in the Zoom sessions, supporting the class teachers, not only with behaviour management, but also with engagement as well. They join additional pastoral Zoom sessions, and they are also a big part of extension group Zoom sessions as well. And the last one there is extension and challenge. So all of our Seesaw activities have additional challenges attached to them to extend our children at all levels. We also look at our MAGT, our more able, gifted and talented learners, and how we can support them in their distance learning programme. We're very fortunate to have a lot of our staff have been trained in the Read Write Ink programme, and one of our fantastic TAs is actually leading on a lot of those extension phonics sessions as well. Okay. Nada, I'm going to hand back over to you.
If you could just talk us through it, Joanne, please. Thank you.
Okay, so we've asked, what part of the early years curriculum have you found most challenging in delivering through distance learning? So quite interestingly there, a lot of teachers and settings have found that science has been quite a challenge. We'll be very honest with you, we've found that lots of different areas of learning have been quite a challenge at different parts throughout the term. For us in particular, we found that communication and language, particularly for some of our ELL learners, has been quite a challenge, particularly as in school they will be immersed in the English language, and that actually now they're in their home settings a lot of the time. Some of their parents aren't able to support them as we would in school with the English language. So that's where we've looked at how we can, as I mentioned before, put additional provisions in place to encourage that communication and language and make sure that those opportunities are available for them. Okay. share. I'm going to hand over to you now to talk, and maybe you can talk a little bit more about this in the next part of your presentation about teaching and learning.
Sure.
Sorry, if you could just reshare the screen, Jo. Thank you.
So I'm going to talk to you about what we do in terms of planning and teaching in the early years at our school. Right from the start of our distance learning journey, we wanted to remain true to the heart of our Safa Community School early years ethos. This is providing exciting learning opportunities through play, exploration and investigations with the child at the centre to promote a lifelong passion for learning. When we started distance learning, all activities were set through Seesaw. After week 1 and realising that distance learning would continue for some time, we moved to having a hybrid of live sessions, screen and non-screen based activities. The children have 4 class Zooms with their teachers once a week. This consists of 2 differentiated phonics Zooms, 1 Zoom session that focuses on communication and language skills, and 1 pastoral Zoom. They also have 3 live PE Zooms a week. For our activities and learning, we use Seesaw as a platform, and I will explain how we use this shortly. When we're usually in school, staff teach very much in the moment, so you can imagine making the shift from completely going with the children's interests to having to direct learning slightly so you could upload activities on Seesaws was at times challenging to our ethos. But the FS team worked together and shared the planning across the year groups. They collaborated and worked in a team to come up with activities, ideas and themes. These are based on observations of children's interests. We do this so the learning opportunities that we provide really do promote a sense of awe and wonder that mirror the opportunities available to them in school. Our children are excited by the opportunities provided and can't wait to complete their learning each day because it's so personalised. Prior to distance learning, as a school, we had developed our digital learning tools, so we were fortunate to be able to seamlessly use Seesaw for our distance learning platform. Seesaw was a programme that teachers, pupils and parents were familiar with and could readily use to capture learning at home. We did have feedback from a small minority of parents who said that Seesaw was not user-friendly, but our head of digital learning created lots of parent-friendly videos to guide them, and he has always been available by email for any questions they may have. If you're familiar with Seesaw, you know you can allocate activities to a child's profile to complete. Initially, we used the voiceover tool for instructions, but after 1 week of distance learning, the teachers started to use Screencastify as a way of connecting with their pupils and adding much needed face-to-face contact from class teachers that the children really needed. It also ensured that other activities such as story time could be further personalised by having a storybook clearly displayed while a class teacher visibly reads and the children can see the teacher's emotions. I'm going to share with you an example now. Just the next slide, Jo. So here's an example of our planning in action. Following feedback from the children during our pastoral Zoom sessions, the teachers discovered that some children, particularly the boys, were not thoroughly enamoured with the themes for literacy that had been chosen. So the teachers asked the children what they would like to learn about, and it was generally agreed that they wanted to learn about dinosaurs. So we use Pi Corbett's Talk for Writing programme as one of our tools to teach writing. So you can see here that one of our teachers created a poem based on dinosaurs. It was then set as an activity on Seesaw, with the teacher acting out the poem for the children to imitate. Now, because the children are familiar with Talk for Writing, it was lovely to see them teaching their parents about Talk for Writing and working with their parents to perform. The parents model and copy the teacher from the video, and here is an example of one of our parents supporting their child to perform the dinosaur poem.
Jo, the sound's not coming through, so you might need to reshare with the audio.
chip, chip, chip.
Now zip, zip, zip.
Zip, zip. Look for bones. Dig, dig, dig.
Dinosaur.
bones. Big, big, big. Back to
Go to the back.
Back to the lab. Chip, chip, chip.
Now zip, zip, zip.
Zip, zip, zip.
That you can see.
Inspect the bones. Chip, chip, chip. We
Put them together.
Put them together. 1, 2, 3. We made a dinosaur. Oh, yippee!
Okay, so following the screen-based activities, the children have an option to complete a non-screen-based activity. And you can see here, as part of the innovation stage for Talk for Writing, the child has rewrote and adapted the poem with support from their parent. We have spoken to parents about academic honesty, so on the whole, we do receive work that does reflect what our children can do independently. Now, on the next slide, I'm going to talk about open-ended learning opportunities. So at the start of our journey, we had quite a few parents who were new to understanding what is best practice in the early years. They were not teachers and their schooling was quite different. So they didn't always quite understand the learning behind the activity set and quite often only completed compulsory activities such as the phonics and maths tasks. From feedback from the children on Zoom and Wellbeing surveys, we quickly realised that some children were not getting a chance to play or learn through play throughout the day. We realised we needed to encourage some parents to provide their children with opportunities to play during the day. So we set free flow as a compulsory activity. Now, free flow at SAFA is a big part of the FS timetable. It's a thing that they really enjoy, and it's the children's time when daily they get to choose, play, direct their own learning and explore their own questioning and ideas. So during distance learning, again using Screencastify, teachers created imaginary scenarios when they would pretend and explain what they enjoyed playing with, and the children were set a task to play with, or something of their choice for at least 40 minutes, and post on Seesaw after. How we got the parents on board was when Free Flow was first set as an activity, I did a video presentation about the importance of play, the links to brain development, and how it prepares children for their later life. We also suggested active play tasks the children could do, and now this is a weekly occurrence and the children really love it. We are also very conscious of the amount of time children are spending on the screen just during distance learning. So when children are not on Zoom or completing tasks that can only be completed on screen, such as online reading, we try to have as many non-screen based practical activities as possible, where children are actively learning away from the screen.
Thank you, Cher. And finally, our last point is about feedback and assessment. And we wanted to share with you some ways that we have ensured that the children continue to get that verbal feedback, but also to continue their progress with their learning at home. So as we all know as early years educators, that verbal feedback is so important for the children. They need that constant feedback to not only progress, but also to get that validation of what they're doing is right, and that really helps with their engagement as well. So luckily with Seesaw, we are actually able to give the verbal feedback on every piece of work that they submit. And it's important for our teachers that they continue to extend the children further by asking further searching questions to extend the children, or for example, if they maybe there's a misconception there, that they actually correct that for the child as well, and encourage them to explore further in the right way. Also with the verbal feedback, it's so important for the children to hear their teacher's voice regularly as well. That's not just in the early years, but all the way through the school we use that so that they're getting that familiar voice all of the time. It's also a great way for the teachers to model to parents as well in how to give that positive reinforcement, but also that constructive feedback as well. As I've mentioned previously, it's been so important that we continue as many of the strategies and ways of working that we have in school, outside of school, as they're learning at home as well. So we continue our feedback policy as much as possible, and in the early years we've introduced it like primary use with our Green for Growth, Think Think, and our Purple Power as well. So we just wanted to show you this short video clip which kind of goes through a clear example of how we utilise it to ensure that the children continue to make progress.
Hi Valentine, I'm just going to use my green pen. I love how you've done I feel all right in the night. You've got your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 words. You've got your capital letter. You've got your finger spaces. I see your full stop. You've used I. You've got all correct and the correct. 2 tricky red words. Well done. The only thing you need to practice is your make sure your goes around this way. But well done. I'm going to give you a green heart. Well done.
Okay, so as you can see from that example there on Seesaw, you are able to model that like you would normally do with the child in class. You're able to do it there so they can visually see and go through those steps with you as a teacher as well. Now with assessment, obviously, as we've mentioned previously about academic honesty, and for our little learners, it is hard because we aren't with them in their normal environment to do all of those observations. However, teacher judgment is so important, and that's the main way for us that we are going to make our end of year judgments, taking into consideration the whole child, what we've seen at school, but also what we can see from our Zoom sessions and from our Seesaw observations as well. The main thing for us, and I'm sure it is for you as well, is focusing on that fostering a love of learning, okay? And if we do that, the children will continue to be excited to learn. They will want to learn, they'll be excited about it, and they will progress. So for us, that's the big key thing at the moment, is continuing that. And then anything we can draw from that, or observations, will then inform us moving forward. And the key thing that we're asking our teachers is to see where those gaps in learning are, so that we can then pass that on to the next teacher eventually when we are back in class, identifying those areas that we will need to work on. So it's about at the moment where the individual child is in all 7 areas of learning, but from what we can see and what we know about that child. Okay, and as I mentioned there, the baseline assessments will be so important upon returning to school, and that's something that we will focus on in term 1 when we know what that looks like. Okay, we just wanted to say a huge thank you for joining us today and for listening to us and some of our ideas. And as I mentioned, we hope it gives you some reassurances in what you're doing for your little learners. We have included our emails there, should you want to ask us any further questions. But as Leanne mentioned, we are a school, you know, we like to collaborate with other schools as well. So if, you know, you want to set anything up, we'd be more than happy to get involved with that. I know that Magnus is going to direct some questions to us in a moment, but we wanted to finish on a video that just encompasses the early years and what we're about at SAFA. This actually came from a maths activity. It was a maths treasure hunt that this family then took with the inspiration from a book that they'd been reading in their story time with the teacher the day before. And it's just fantastic, and you can see the level that some of our parents are able to go to, but also building in that love and excitement for learning, all of those 7 areas of learning very much through play.
Daddy, do you like white shirts? Does it even have pockets? Okay, first is the front.
Oh, easy.
Next is the wedge.
Oh, it seems very wobbly. There's a big drop. Good guess.
Next is the crocodile.
Crocodiles. We better not go in that water. You better go in the stepping stones. Don't let them snap you. Oh, you got it.
Daddy, don't go when I'm in the mountain.
Come on, you can do it. Get up the mountain. Before the boulders come, yeah. Get off that mountain. Let's go. Yes. Boulder!
A cat dog.
Oh no, not that ferocious cat dog. Get him. Yes. Defeat him. Yes.
And you have no powers anymore.
Yes. Where are we now?
We are at Espresso Point.
What's it got there? X? Yes. X marks the spot. It must be here. Treasure!
We found it. Let's see what's in it.
Let's see.
What a sweet video. Thank you, ladies. I'm sure this little girl, she will either become an adventurer or an actress when she grows up. Thank you, Leanne. Thank you, Joanne, and thank you, Shireen, for your lovely presentation. Some great tips. We will now, as Joanne said, we will now move on to the Q&A bit of this webinar. And in the registration forms that you've all filled out, many of you have submitted some questions that I will pose to Leanne, Joanne, and Shireen. I'm also going to try and include some of the live questions that I can see that you are posting on the live chat feature there on the right-hand side. Well, let's kick this off with a submitted question. The headline is "Improvements on the Horizon." Have you seen a difference in shy kids, hyperactive kids, or even highly creative kids? Are they suddenly doing better with remote learning than they were doing in the physical classroom? And if I could please ask Joanne to answer this question.
Yeah, of course. Interestingly, we found that for some of our learners who were maybe a little bit fragile within school, a little bit shy, or used to worry about a lot of different things, particularly separating from mum and dad, things like that, that actually some of those children are now really flourishing with distance learning because they are in their familiar environment with their familiar adults. On the other side of that, then we have seen some of our children who are normally little social butterflies. They're, really confident in school. They love that interaction with their friends, with their teachers. They are now struggling slightly more outside of school in the distance learning kind of setup. So it's been important that we track all of our learners, and again, that regular feedback has been so important in being able to monitor how these different children are feeling, and ensuring when we do transition back into school that this newfound confidence for some of our learners continues, but also then for some of our ones who've been struggling outside of school, then transition back into school okay as well. On the flip side of that, we do have, for example, some of our very shy learners, particularly on Zoom sessions, they will kind of sit there and they'll be looking wide-eyed at the screen and not want to maybe participate. So what we've actually done is obviously the teachers will support the families with that, but also feeding back to the pastoral leads on how actually we can support them further. So for example, putting them into smaller group Zooms or one-to-one Zooms with the teacher to build up their confidence first, to then be able to start being introduced to more of their friends. It's such a difficult thing for them to be able to understand you have to talk to a computer when normally, why aren't I in school with my friends, and being able to play alongside. So yeah, there's many different learners that have actually surprised us in both ways, but also it's been about mainly how we support them in being able to access the learning at home.
Thank you for that answer, Joanne. I'm now going to move on to a question to Leanne. Welcome back to school. As we've all seen today in the newspaper, a lot of the announcement that we possibly should go back to school on the 30th of August. Preparing children for coming back to school, what are your initial thoughts on strategies and preparations to ensure a welcoming return? Also, what are your thoughts on preparing children for social/physical distancing?
Yeah, so obviously with the early years foundation stage, predominantly all of your FS1 children could be potentially brand new to the school, the family entirely, which means I've not been involved in the distance learning period. And so last week, myself, Joe and Sheer, we sent actually a little survey and an email to all of our new foundation stage parents to see what are their main concerns, worries, things that they would like to know, because we're going to be hosting a number of webinars with them over the coming weeks. For example, we have one arranged next week about how to support families, not just with that transition and starting school, but how to transition children out of lockdown. You know, around Dubai, children under the age of 12 have not really been allowed out. And so one of the things we've been looking at to support with that is a summer learning program, not just for the children that are currently in school with us now, but also to get some of our new families, particularly our FS1s and our new FS2 children, familiar with the platforms that we're using here at school, because we envisage we're not going to go straight back and having all of the children on site. So it will be very much a staggered return. It could be, we looked at 3 scenarios in our teacher planning day, whether it's mornings and afternoons for our foundation stage to ensure we're only having, say, 10 children in the classroom at one time. At the moment, myself and the facilities team are looking at trials to get what would a classroom look like in foundation stage? How do you make a 3 or a 4-year-old not touch something or not touch other people? So in a way, in Dubai, though, we are fortunate. We still have almost 3 months before we return to school, and a lot of our counterparts around the world have started with some of the younger children. So it is about utilising that time, and that's something we relay to our staff. We need to use the next few weeks now with our children, with our parents, whether they're new or existing, to get them familiar with both ourselves and the school. And the biggest thing in preparing our children will be those relationships. So even saying to parents that are new, would you like a Zoom conference with someone at school? So we're going to start those meetings. What type of teacher would really suit your child and their needs? So getting them used to this new way of learning, but also taking best practice from around the world about what's working, what's not working, but doing what's right for our children. But first and foremost, ensuring that everyone's safe. And I think our staff, you know, the questions that they had on our PD day and looking at recovery, their questions are very different to what maybe a leadership team member will look at. So, and even the innovative ideas that they're coming up with in terms of, and I know for Sheer, bless her, Sheer loves a very natural environment. And as you know, when we're looking at cleanliness and ensuring that things are clean and sterilised, plastic seems to be the best way. So it's looking at even the materials you're using in the foundation stage and changing as well. So it's all of those factors that we're looking at the moment, but in a way we are fortunate about the time frame we have before we return in September.
Thank you, Leanne, for that very detailed response. We're now going to move it back to distance learning a little bit again. I've got a question here for Shireen. Keeping body and mind at ease, encouraging movement. Please share with us some of your activities that you apply for the little ones during breaks. What gets them excited? Some
Okay, so daily in the morning they have wake up, shake up. So we have a member of staff that will dance along to a song and the children copy the movements, and quite often the whole family will get involved in that. We also have at least 2 mindful activities a week, and actually during Ramadan every day there was a mindfulness activity for the children to complete. And quite often the children, they will say, I'm doing my calm breathing throughout the day when they feel they need to as well. We also have live PE Zooms, but also online PE Zoom, so the children can at any time do PE, a PE lesson. And we also have a PE YouTube channel that children can access if they want to keep active throughout the day. We also, they love show and tell, like many children do. So they have a Padlet so they can upload their work and then look at all the other children in the year groups there show and tell too. And we also just include lots of tips for parents. We had a Wellbeing week recently. So we had webinars and we've done lots of tips and sessions for parents.
Thank you, Shireen. And now a question over to Joanne. We've got a lot of questions here regarding concentration. How to increase the concentration level of my early years child? What are your thoughts and tips to stay focused?
Yeah, that is a very good question, and for every different child they're completely different, and as I mentioned before, this is an alien concept for them. So we work very closely with our parents on, for example, reward systems. It could be that, for example, some of our children who don't have a big concentration or attention span, that we actually say to the parents, okay, if you're having a battle trying to do one of the seesaw activities, why don't you give them a little timer maybe on your phone and say, right, now it's our time for this activity. Then once the time is finished, you go and have your playtime, then we come back. So a bit like we do in school, having those brain breaks, those times where there's that little bit, oh, if I do this now, and then I can go and do my favorite thing, go and play with the cars, for example. But on the flip side of that also, for some children, you know, a seesaw activity on the screen just isn't going to be beneficial for them. So some of our teachers will then take the learning objective and give the parents ideas on, oh, actually you could incorporate that into their play. They love cars, so let's take that maths activity and you use your cars and you do it that way. So it's about giving parents those different hints and tips. Also for some of our children, it might sound strange, but we encourage the parents to get them dressed in the morning in their school uniform, so they know, right, now it's my time for school. For some children that has worked, and some parents have given us feedback and said, oh, it worked initially, now it's not so much, and then for others they didn't do it to begin with and now it's working well for them. So just any kind of tips that we can give has really been helping. And as Cher mentioned before, the big one, bringing in their interests, what they love to learn about, has been really important in building that engagement and concentration.
Thank you so much. We're now going to move on to some of the live questions. I can see there's an anonymous person who's posted a question. How to engage all children in the focus group while you are handling the student of determination? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So Jo, do you want me to kind of start with that? So obviously our teachers would never be put in a live lesson on their own in that particular case. So on Zoom, we're very fortunate to have breakout rooms. So maybe, for example, the teacher might do the input and then maybe they may break in to follow up with a TA, or maybe one of our inclusion support teachers who also come into the lessons with them as well. We obviously appreciate, even within a classroom setting, you wouldn't have a range of additional needs where the teacher was required to work with them one-to-one or on their own with a large number of other children. And I think that's why we're really seeing the importance of having very small numbers for our Zoom sessions. And they go all the way up until year 3. It's only when we have something very non-academic related and more pastoral based where we would bring the whole class into that environment, because behaviour management isn't as much of a priority and the focus and attention. So it would be ensuring that that support is in there. But as mentioned before, our Zooms are always pitched at the ability of the group of children that are in there. So for example, if there is a child of determination that could be working on an entirely different level to maybe some of the other children in the group, that would be when they have a one-to-one session in comparison to being in a group of 8 other children in the classroom as well. Jo, do you have anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, and just to say as well that again, it's about working with the parents, so preparing them. So sometimes our teachers will then send the information beforehand to the parents so that they can then prepare their child. But again, we're very fortunate, as Leanne said, with our inclusion team and how they will then support alongside both the teacher and the family as well.
Thank you, Joanne. We have another question here. There's somebody who's wondering, can you please explain about the accessing children in distance learning? Does that ring a bell? Accessing children.
Or maybe, is it assessing potentially?
Assessing, maybe, possibly,
yeah,
yes.
Maybe,
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe talk a little bit about assessment.
Talk maybe about our baseline point that we did initially at the start of distance learning to get a bit of a baseline and where we've gone from there.
Absolutely. So as we've mentioned previously, that the main way for us to kind of assess the children is through observations, as we would normally do in class as well. So the whole school actually had an assessment week where we looked at all of the different areas of learning. We then brought in some key examples. We moderated with each other, so the teachers had the opportunity to discuss different, for example, higher, middle and lower examples of work. So it's been about taking those observations, but also as well, particularly at that baseline point, we made it very clear to the teachers, think about where the children were when they were with you in class, because that that gave them that baseline then on, moving forward, and also that then helped them to look at the targets and the next steps for individual children. Again, taking into consideration the changes in environment and how that might affect the children as well.
Thank you, Joanne. Ladies, Shireen, Joanne, and Leanne, thank you so much for your presentation, for this Q&A session. It's been wonderful. I'm now going to hand over to Nada. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Magnus and Joe, Shireen and Leanne. That was a very inspiring presentation. I'm just very mindful of the time. We have gone just a tad over, but that's absolutely fine. No, don't worry about that. That's great. A lot of great and fantastic examples in your presentation. So we'll just quickly now if you need to leave, our esteemed attendees, you're free to leave. But if you have another 5 minutes just to spare with us in answering a few feedback questions using Menti, just take a couple more minutes if you don't mind. So you will see on your screens or on menti.com the next question, our first feedback question, in fact. So how did you find the structure, the content, and how well the presenters were able to answer and respond to your questions? So if you don't mind answering that question quickly for me. So overall, how satisfied were you with the quality and the structure of the webinar and the presenters and their preparedness in responding to questions? And just in case you've forgotten the code, if you go to menti.com and use the code 290529, that would be absolutely awesome. And I can see 69 people have now responded. Thank you so much. And just with menti.com, it is an anonymous platform, so feel free to provide feedback. We're always wanting to improve these sessions of What Works X and really do value the feedback you have to share with us. Thank you so much for that. Okay, and just moving on to the next question. What did you enjoy most about the webinar today? Oh, okay. Thank you for that comment. The tips and ideas, and the person that said nothing, that's absolutely fine. Perhaps it gave you some validation to what you're currently doing in your school environment. So that's wonderful. Good information, the use of Seesaw, answered most of my queries. I was really impressed with the in-depth knowledge from the presenters, fantastic speakers and very inspiring, clear and concise. The video of the child doing the treasure hunt. Yes, absolutely. I love that one as well. As I mentioned, I have young kids myself, and that's certainly an idea for me as a parent, actually. I'm going to try doing a treasure hunt, and I noticed someone in the chat feature said that the video brought a lot of delight to him or her. Oh, I think it was Abir that mentioned that, and that she's done her own treasure hunts with her children. So that's great. I'm all for getting kids excited about the love of learning and keeping them having an explorative mind. A lot of feedback there. Thank you so much to everyone that's engaging with Menti. We'll move on to the next question. What will be the first thing you plan to do to improve distance learning provision to the early years? So now that you've listened to the presentation by our friends at Suffolk Community, how has the presentation inspired you, or what will you do now that you've listened to this presentation? Some of you may have no plans to change your approach. Maybe this served as a validation, as I mentioned before. Increased communication with parents. better balance between live and recorded sessions, design learning experiences which engage children through projects and purposeful activities, such as the treasure hunt perhaps, establish wellbeing opportunities for children to access from home and provide children with a choice of activities or projects away from the screen. And if you have other ideas, that's fantastic, because I'd love to hear about those other ideas on our next slide. But I'll just give you a moment there. Please do feel free to let us know what will be the first thing you may want to do following today's webinar. So out of the 35 people so far that have responded, providing children with a choice of activities and projects away from the screen is taking the lead. I'm all for that as well. My son's teacher actually provides extra class dojo points for children that do their work in their home learning books. So writing it down rather than just doing it electronically. Fantastic. Thank you so much. So those that did say other, I would love to know what other ways you plan to further support the early years during distance learning. And for everyone else, it would be fantastic to hear, or if you could share some details as to how you would implement new ways and plans to further support the early years. And we have this slide here because following today's session, you'll be able to access this video presentation, and it just keeps a record of everyone's ideas, because the whole purpose around these What Works X webinars is to really help facilitate the collaboration between schools and the sharing of ideas. So I can see more hands-on activities. The treasure hunts, yes, I think I'm going to have a lot of teachers now designing and developing treasure hunts for our young ones. Free flow, allowing that flow and engagement in the learning activity. And I loved what the ladies said before, you know, it's really about fostering a love of learning, not so much about the assessment part, and making sure that they know their times table or the traditional, you know, maths and English, but it's really about fostering that love of learning and keeping kids excited about learning. So when they return, they're full of zest and joy to be back in the school environment and to embrace learning. Thank you so much for that. Okay, sorry, I'll just bring up my final slide for you, and then you're more than welcome to leave. Okay. So I just wanted to bring your attention to the In This Together website. Which is basically a repository of free resources that we at the KHDA have put together on our In This Together website. So please feel free to visit that website and at that location, you'll be able to access the videos from today and from previous webinars. So please do feel free to check out that website. Also, just on that point, we run these webinars every Monday and every Thursday at 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock. And we are also running Arabic sessions on Wednesdays. So do check out In This Together website for a list of upcoming and previously recorded sessions. And just finally, I don't know why it's not coming up on your screen. Oh, there we go. It's, I don't know if many of you have seen this or not, but this is from our friends from the Action for Happiness in the UK. And they've put together a calendar of things parents, teachers, students can do during the month of June. We know it's a difficult time at the moment. Here are some ideas to keep people positively mind-framed, and some ideas to share perhaps with your parents and with your students as teachers. So from my home to yours, finally we've come to an end. Thank you so much to our fantastic attendees for joining us for this session. We hope to see you on Thursday for our next session, which will be around an inclusion topic. And for now, be safe, be well, and take care. Thank you, everybody, and goodbye.